did I lose my place? Yeah, I did. I had a question submitted to my survey a couple of weeks ago on how exactly I transitioned from a QA engineer, a manual QA engineer, mind you guys, to a full developer software engineer in my company. And I really appreciate you. Let me make sure that I get this name right. Tiandra, I really appreciate your question. You gave it to me on Instagram, you gave it to me on my form. So if you guys could, if you have any more questions or any other topics that you want me to talk about, please, please, please put it in my survey. It will be linked in the description box below. So next steps for a person that is trying to go from being a QA to a software developer. This is a really good question that I am acknowledging today in this video. I am so happy that you guys are here. My name is Sidney. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, I am a software engineer and I help people figure out better ways to be mindful, productive, as well as figure out and navigate their ways through transitioning into a tech career. And I'm so happy to be here with you guys. So I'm actually going to split this video into two parts. I will be first describing my experience being a QA and how exactly I made that transition into a software engineer position. And then I will go on to talk about how I would go about potentially looking at positions as a QA to a developer if I decided to kind of like start my path over again. And this is where I put in a very big, huge, like red disclaimer. I hope that I remember that. It is really important for you guys to understand that my transition from a QA to a software engineer is gonna be completely different from what you guys might be experiencing when it comes to that transition. I really want it to be understood that I have no direct path for you guys. I really do not know what your individual situations are. So it's really gonna be important for you to kind of take these steps with a grain of salt and really start creating a customized plan for you that's going to work for you, that is going to work for you, and that is going to keep you motivated and in a position to make sure that you get to where you want to go in the future. And a part of going from a QA to a dev, the important lesson that I really want you guys to understand is that you need to stop playing with your potential. Really understand that you need to put in the work, dedicate yourself, dedicate your time and space to actually doing the work step by step in a process, in a consistent process rather, to get yourself in a position where you can start advocating for yourself in a new position, in that interview, whoever you need to talk to, whoever you need to find alliances with, finding a mentor with, make sure that you do the work to get you to the point where you want to go. I can't give you super detailed specifics because of the company that I'm at, but that's okay. I eventually started my QA position, and that was September or October of 2018. Whatever the case is, I had interviewed in September. I think it was that like I needed to go through some like background checks and some craziness. And then I actually started my position in October of 2018. So that was about 2 years ago, and I was really excited about the product. I was really excited to be finally getting my foot in the door. I had interviewed for a position that was for learning how to start automating the systems and processes and different features that we had on our application through Selenium, and I would primarily be using Java. What I didn't know about this particular position was that we were actually transferring all of that work, all of that automation work to another testing suite that actually was primarily done in C#. It was incredibly overwhelming and hard to kind of figure out the subtleties of what was what when it came to the features that were actually covered in our test suites and what weren't exactly covered in our test suites. So from what I remember, I was a part of a team of 3 who was trying to get all of our features kind of like logged into one place and figure out which features that were actually covered in our automation suites. I felt like it took me about 6 or 7 months to completely understand the gist of it all, really getting down into the meat and bones of what exactly we were trying to cover. And eventually I was a part of a program where we started little by little putting in small, really bite-sized features of our features into our testing automation suite and started just building on test case after test case after test case. I would say that in the summer of 2019 was when I finally realized that I was getting incredibly bored. I had realized at the time that I knew that I wasn't coding as much as I really wanted to, and not only was I still kind of looking at what I could do when it came to Java development, I was looking at some classes casually. I started kind of building up the projects that I could do. I had realized that there was so much more that I had wanted to do, and really started to have this like really zoomed in kind of focus on like, I want to be a Java developer, especially since, you know, there was just a very thick wall line, whatever you want to call it, between what exactly the testers were doing versus what exactly the developers were doing. I decided that I would start an initiation to begin transferring a lot of our automation suites to just a better and potentially much more cost-effective source to kind of collaborate more with the developers and other teams on getting our automation suites to a better place structurally. I started doing a lot of research in the summer going into the fall of 2019 on what exactly would make sense for us for an automation suite that we could go to. And I figured that because we were working with an agile coach at the time, we were starting to slowly transition into a better way to productively go about our sprints. I thought about how behavioral driven development, or BDD, would help us in the long run for our automation suite. So I decided Cucumber would be a great place to start. I will also tell you right now, it completely burned to the ground. There was a lot of miscommunication, and I feel resistance to actually transitioning over to just a faster, much more efficient test suite, in my opinion, because of a couple of things. We had such a large automation suite. I'd say about 80% of our features were covered at this point. It was a very long and arduous process to get us to that place initially. And then I had to realize that teaching myself Java, as well as teaching other like engineers that were in the QA realm Java as well, in the BDD sense, was going to be a little bit arduous. So having to go to a completely new automation suite on top of maintaining our old one, on top of making sure our deliverables for our Jira tickets were done, it was a little too much. So that was totally understandable. That was axed. Oh well, can't do anything about that. I still wanted to do more with the abilities that I knew that I had in my heart, and so I did a couple of other things. I had started to negotiate a little bit with my manager on how exactly I can become a dev from where I was right then. And what I decided and what my manager helped me kind of negotiate with was that I would start gradually taking on stories as a developer, as long as this condition had to be met, that I had stayed up to date with all of my duties as a QA person. So I needed to make sure that all of the tests that I was responsible for, they were met with the deadline that they were supposed to make. I needed to make sure that I kept to my responsibilities when it came to being responsible for whatever automation setups that needed to be done, and teach essentially the other developers how exactly they needed to kind of go about when it came to testing my code that was going into the development environment and so on and so forth. That was a lot of responsibility, but I enjoyed it. It was a lot of hard work that I felt like I dedicated myself to. There was a lot of long hours. There was a lot kind of going on with it, but I had the assistance that I wanted, and I felt really good about the process in general. However, that was very also short-lived as well because of new shifts in our department and some people not necessarily enjoying the process of doing QA work, which is totally understandable in this case. I had to kind of go back into my role as a just normal QA, which was fine. I totally understood where people's perspectives were, and I was willing to try another way to get myself into where I wanted to go as a developer. But of course, there's always going to be some pitfalls. In November of 2019, that was when I made the official changeover from a QA to a software engineer, and there was a little bit of pushback that I will honestly never forget. One of my directors, kind of completely over my manager's head, had actually asked me if whether or not I wanted to have an individual role as a QA lead. I did say no, and I said no because I wanted to be a developer. I wanted to be balls deep in code. I wanted the pressure of deadlines. I wanted to see kind of actively what I was creating in production, see it work, see how exactly it was significant in the grand scheme of things for our application. I was serious about the work that I wanted to do. It wasn't going to be deviated just because somebody else told me that they didn't think that I could do the job. And I was really appreciative of my managers and people that were advocating for me. They stuck by me, they stuck by my resolve, and that is how I got to be a developer today in my company. And I'm just very grateful for the experiences that I've been able to have in this transition.